So this is opening lines versus closing lines. Perfect examples here, and when you should take an opening line versus a closing line. So opening lines are lines that are not molded into the current line. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of fluctuations on the opening line. So if you're an early player, you can get some more value if you know the direction that the line is going to move based off of the public. So if you know that the game is going to get a lot of public action, um, you'd be better off waiting because you're going to get a more favorable line if you wait until it's molded into the current line. For instance, this matchup right here, Miami was bringing up this first-time starter, this pitcher for Miami here. So indeed you would know that the public was going to come in strong on St. Louis, and that's just through trial and error and knowing these situations. So if you would have liked Miami in this matchup, you would have most definitely waited until this line movement molded itself into the current line. So you would have gotten so much more value from plus 135 all the way to plus 167. So you would have gotten about 30 cents more by waiting. And this just comes with practice and trial and error and knowing what is the public side and what side they're going to be betting on. So in this example, this would have worked if you would have taken Miami here because of this first-time starter, because no one's going to bet on a first-time starter, right? That's why St. Louis was getting all this action here, and this is why Miami won this game. But this is just one example here. There's many examples. We're talking about the opening line versus the closing line. And should you wait until the line moves or should you bet it early? Personally, I like to wait to see how everything levels out because my betting style is more gauged toward betting underdogs. So I like to bet on underdogs more often than favorites. So that is why, to me, it's more of an advantage by waiting until the current line is formed and molded, because you're going to get a lot more value because the public likes to bet favorites and overs. That's a very common practice with sports bettors in general. They love to bet favorites and overs. So if you're an underdog bettor, I suggest waiting until the line levels out before placing any type of wager. Now, if you're a favorite bettor, I'd probably bet early because you know that the line is going to be moved, especially if you're betting on favorites. You'd be better off betting the line as soon as it comes out. The only drawback to that is you can't get as much money down on the game early on because there's limits on these games, and they put limits on the opening lines to prevent any more liability, and so they can shape these lines into the current line that they want on these games. So that is why there is a limit on first opening line, because there's more of a liability, and a lot of the professional bettors would take advantage of that and basically put a sports book out of business. Okay, so that's the difference between opening lines and closing lines. Let me show you this example right here. Toronto and Golden State. This is June 5th game. This was game 3, I believe. Yeah, game 3 without Klay Thompson. He was injured. Notice how the line opened at 5.5. Okay, this is also a really good example here. Line opened at 5.5 without Klay Thompson. Okay, this line dropped all the way to 2.5. Now, tomorrow's game, opened up at 4 with Klay Thompson. Obviously, he's playing a little bit, not 90% or even 100%, but still, you got to compare and contrast some of these opening lines and use them as reference, because think about it. They opened this line, this game tomorrow at 4, okay, with Klay Thompson playing. And the game that he wasn't playing, they opened it at 5.5. All right. So they're basically shading this line toward Toronto here. And Kevin Durant wasn't even playing game 3 either. So that's something you have to take note of. It's always good to compare and contrast previous games, especially in the playoffs. And if they play repeatedly, a repeated amount of times, because the public loves to compare previous games and how those games turned out, and you can find some value doing that as well as betting on the opening line or the closing line. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope this was helpful, this information, and I'll be back with some more videos explaining how these lines work and some more informational videos as well. So comment, rate, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.